I-80 Club +1. So happy to welcome back onto the pod for now the third time with Jack Mitchell, myself, Josh Peterson. It is Dirk Chatelain. Hello, Dirk.
This feels good, guys. This feels like home.
That's 100% not true.
It does. You guys are like my people. If you're the ones I relate to most, for better or worse.
Wow, what a compliment.
Hold on. A question already. Why would you even say that? What's that mean exactly? I'm curious. What do you even mean? You relate to most?
I mean, Jack, we've got chemistry, man. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I thought I was like in your inner circle until you had me on for to financially boost your radio show all those years and add advertisement dollars, and then you just dumped me out of the blue.
That's right. Well, we'll see.
Hey,
you might get back on.
I laughed harder during our radio interviews than probably any media thing I've ever done. So,
all right. Well, you might get a call again. Don't.
Josh,
be careful what you wish for.
Josh, at one point, we would get deeply personal on Mondays at 8:15. I do remember one time when I think Jack got me to mention that my one of my children would occasionally pluck my back hairs.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean it got real.
So weird. It was bizarre.
A lot of Gretna.
And you wonder why I haven't asked you back. Like seriously.
A lot of Gretna Lincoln East banter back and forth.
Oh yeah, that we don't have to do that anymore because Gretna can't get in the just not up to the competition anymore, right?
Well, I think we could still probably win. We're just
okay.
By the way, Dirk,
let's play baseball. Let's play baseball. Get them on the baseball field. I'll do it right now. I'll turn the lights on at Den Hartog. Let's do it now.
Dirk, Mike Stibbs is hanging out in the Discord chat, and he says, "Wow, shots fired at USC." Didn't laugh a whole lot when you came on with John and I. Is that the word here that we're learning right now? Very sad.
Well, you guys were much more substantive. Jack just wanted cheap laughs.
Interesting. Jack, your thoughts?
No, I mean, I was about to invite him back on, but that's over now. You guys, the hard hit. A lot of people call Josh and John one of the most hard hitting shows in town. I mean, I hear that.
Some are saying
many times.
Jack,
I hear that.
Okay, I'm happy that you said this because there was a classic message board thread about the zone, and I was reading through it, and there was a comment in there that was basically, I don't like it when Josh and John try to be funny. I wish that they would just talk serious about sports because they're way better when they just do that. I was like, that's not the thesis of the show. What are you talking about? I don't want to be serious on the air.
I would actually prefer you guys just got angry at each other more often.
We don't do it very much. We don't get mad and yell at each other very often.
Too common. They're basically the same person.
Here it is, Jack. I found it. When they're not acting like buffoons yelling at each other, both John and Josh are very well spoken, deliver their points well, and are not afraid to think differently. Their show would be awesome if they lost the buffoonery. Like, what a wild backhanded compliment.
Wow. That is interesting.
Yeah, I never would have thought that.
That's the only thing I like. I hate when you guys do serious stuff, especially like, let's break down the freaking NFL. Okay. I mean, there's a billion places I can get that. What are we doing here?
Yeah, that's true.
Just be dorks about stuff.
Hey, that's how I feel when you talk politics.
Hey, me too. Guess what? Me too, Dirk. It's obviously not doing anything. So,
Dirk, man, how are you? This is the we were talking about it right before we got going. This is the third time, though. Both you two forgot that you have been on 3 times now.
Very memorable.
Hey, Jack, should we tell Josh about how I was like your first ever Jack Mitchell podcast guest, and then somehow you like dumped the whole season and it doesn't exist anymore? And
very sad.
Oh, you were no. You were like the beginning of a new season, and then I quit it.
I literally came to your house.
Yeah, you did. He came to my house. He sat at the table. I mean, I'm sure you had another reason to be here, but yeah, you came to the house. We sat at my kitchen table. We recorded the whole thing.
And then did you even release it? Like, is it still just out?
Yeah, it went really bad. Like, there was no interest in it, and it was Dirk complaining about his career, and people were like, we don't need to hear about his first world problems. It got like 18 total listens, and I'm like, I can't have this. And pulled it off the internet. It's been deleted. I've burned the file. It's gone.
Actually, that part is true, Jack. It has been deleted, right? Like it's totally gone.
The Jack Mitchell podcast, including the Josh and Michael Severe interview, which was
awesome,
wild. Including my interview with my wife, which Mike Schaefer claims is the best podcast ever made. All gone. That none of it exists.
It's gone. Like it's literally gone.
Yeah, totally gone. My computer. I mean, Josh knows this. My computer completely died, and I don't think the cloud existed in like 2018, and so it's all gone. Like there was.
Hey,
the cloud got invented like 2 years ago. So.
Can I tell you a story related to that?
Yeah.
There are very few. Like, I would say one of the highest anxiety points for any journalist is doing an interview that gets deleted, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys have been there.
You're worried about it.
It's a horrible feeling. And thankfully it very rarely happened to me. However, it did happen one very prominent time. We were doing the Where I Come From podcast, which I always did in person because I always got better interviews. I would go out to the person, whether it was John Cook or Trev Alberts or Bruce Rasmussen or Doug McDermott, whoever. We did all these things in person because I think you get better interviews in person. Mm-hmm. That's my subtle jab at radio. And anyway,
this podcast.
Anyway, so
he could have come over again. I mean, he could have. He has room down here.
There were two exceptions, though. One was Harrison Beck. Okay, we did that one over the phone in studio. Mm-hmm. And the second one was Zach Taylor. And you're like, oh, the Zach Taylor podcast. That sounds interesting. I don't remember listening to that. That's because it was never released, because it was lost in the system. Partly my fault. But this was before he became a head coach. Like it's, up and coming. Hey, Zach Taylor, whatever happened to that guy? And like a year later, he was like coaching in the Super Bowl, or 2 years later.
Right.
And we had this great podcast interview about his whole life and career. And, he got into all this stuff, and nobody ever heard it because it got dumped.
See, Josh, the cloud didn't exist in 2016. That's what I was saying.
It was a very different era.
There was no way you could save a file. If it was deleted on your computer, you were screwed.
Dirk, right? One time I drove to Lincoln for Jack and I to do a Be Kind Husker rewind.
Lord.
And the computer literally crapped out in the middle of the recording. And so then I just had to go home to Omaha.
And guys, it's so again, it very rarely happened to me, but it is so humiliating.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys probably confront it more than I do, but I mean, I would get to the point, it probably happened 3 times in 20 years, but it would be so humiliating that I would get to the point where I would record a stinking interview on 3 devices, because I'm like, I am not letting this happen where a tape recorder goes bad, or, so I'd be like, I'd put a phone out there, I'd put a computer, it's just like, we're not letting this happen again. It would literally keep me up at night.
That's Josh's internet keeps me up at night. It's not very good. Cox goes down in Omaha.
Upsetting.
One of the many infrastructure issues Omaha has. Like down here, not an issue. But of course it is there. Information superhighway, actual superhighway, not very efficient. Hey, I've noticed.
Jack, do you even follow me on Twitter anymore? Seriously, you don't have to lie.
I can check. I don't know.
So
it's probably don't. Elon. I think unfollows people.
So obviously you don't, which is there's obviously some subtle bitterness there. But the reason I bring it up, I was in Lincoln 4 weeks ago, and I was going east on Pine Lake Road.
Oh, good Lord,
Jack! There are 12 roundabouts in 3 miles.
You're not even talking about Pine Lake. You're talking about the next one over, right?
No, the one south of Pine Lake.
Yeah. You're not talking about
Yankee
Hill. You're talking about Yankee Hill. Yes.
Jack, I mean, it was seriously like a Seinfeld episode. There was a roundabout every 3 blocks for 3 miles.
Would you have rather there been a stoplight at every one?
We're not quite that bad, but the roundabout, there's something comical about the roundabout. I feel like it needs to be in a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode or something like that.
Why did you unfollow Dirk, Jack?
Yeah, what's up with that?
It's just not as much content as listen, I think I speak for everyone when I say I miss 2012 Dirk.
Bring back the Bo Pelini era Dirk.
That was the peak. It's kind of. It's sort of like when your favorite band, you're like the old man, I love the old stuff, and then they put out new albums. You're like, man, it's just if you go to the concert, it's like, boy, I hope they do the hits, right? I hope they do the early hits. And, with him, it's kind of like I miss the early hits, and it's hard to hear some of the new stuff sometimes. So
that's actually, that's people have said the same thing about Jack Mitchell circa 2001.
So. Oh, yeah. 2001?
2001, Jack Mitchell, he knew about the stunts to crouch play that was about to happen at the Oklahoma.
I did.
That guy was plugged in.
I would have killed the inside in. Oh my gosh, Josh! If the inside info Discord
would have
been alive, I would have really. I mean, I've got great info on all the transfer portal stuff, but I would have killed that. I knew that play was coming. I did.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I knew it was coming.
And as a result, Nebraska was psychologically scarred from a national championship loss, and the rest is history.
Yeah,
they would have been better off losing that game. They would have been better off losing the 2001 Oklahoma game, falling into a upper tier bowl game, finishing the season 11-1, and they would have been better off because of it.
Yeah, I'm like that was at some level of happiness. That was the last I mean, if you're putting happiness on like a temperature gauge, that was the last time you hit a certain level, right?
Wow.
It's definitely not been there since then.
You guys, it's the last time Nebraska won 11 games in the season.
Yeah. And we're off to a very depressing start in the interview. Dirk Chatelain hanging out with us. We had Dirk on. Dirk, I'm a sicko. Now, some people would say this is sicko behavior, re-listening to an interview that you did like 2 years ago. I would say it was me preparing for tonight's conversation.
I did not do that, BT dubs.
Well, I re-listened to it, and Dirk, there were two things that you said in there.
Oh God,
that stood out to me in a good way. Because now we're 2 years into the Matt Rule experience, and at that time it was funny. We were all like, "Wow, this is going to be so interesting and fun, and maybe it's going to be different, and they're going to be good." But you said something about the Frost era.
Is this like when Tim Russert used to pull clips of like old quotes that politicians would say?
If I would have had like an extra 15 minutes tonight, I was thinking about doing that and uploading it into StreamYard.
It's called impeaching the witness is what it's called. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lawyer. I decided not to do that. But Dirk, you said that the Frost era essentially had you questioning if like Nebraska football is a fraudulent program and a lie. And I wonder if 2 years later, if that feeling is maybe there even more for you, just given what the hell has happened on the football field for them, including finishing 1-5 in 2024.
Josh, why are you doing this to me? I'm trying to rebuild my stature as a citizen.
Is that why you quit to get your Q rating up? You probably did. That's all you've been doing, Q rating up. Like only positive, feel good stories. Dirk's the basketball dad now. It's all Q rating stuff for you.
If you followed me on Twitter, which you don't anymore, you would know that that's not true. I'm still taking as much criticism, including from Larry Putney, as I ever did.
What?
Oh, you guys.
That dude will rip people, though, for sure. Everyone knows him for that. What?
Yeah. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll answer your question like this.
Yeah.
There are so few days that I miss covering the program.
Yeah.
The exception is like the day after the Ohio State game or USC game, or, where you're just like, how the hell did they lose that? Like, I mean, guys, we used to talk about Nebraska, not, the law of averages, and there's no way they can continue down this path. We talked about that in like 2018 or something. Like, it is so bizarre that we're still talking about this. I seriously spent, and again, this almost never happens, but the day after the Ohio State game, I wanted to know what the mathematical odds of losing 27 consecutive games to ranked teams was. And so we're driving out to my parents' house, which is like 75 miles away. And I made my wife drive.
God, that's a terrible drive, by the way. I've done it. Wow.
I made my wife.
Bad drive. Yeah.
Some would say beautiful Nebraska countryside, but whatever. Anyway, so I spent like the whole car ride, like calculating what the probability of Nebraska losing 27 consecutive games. I factored in the point spreads, and it was like 2,000 to 1. Like seriously, it was 2,000 to 1 that Nebraska would lose those 27 consecutive games to ranked teams. And I'm just like, this is fascinating. I've just spent like an hour and a half on this. I have nowhere to publish it. I have no platform, but I'm somehow fascinated by just the persistent agony of this, like some, chronic sore foot pain that never goes away. And so what I'm fascinated by is just honestly like the mathematical odds of this continuing down this road. Like, it's, you guys, it is so far past improbable.
Yeah.
Improbable is not even on the vocabulary list anymore. It is freaking impossible.
Yes.
It is impossible.
It is. Which is why I'm tired of people offering solutions. There's no solution.
Well,
I'm done with solutions. I don't want to.
And again, it's not because I'm not interested. I still watch, but it is a big part of why I can't do the whole freaking Phil Snow, John Butler, things are going to change crap. Like, just wake me up. Wake me freaking up when they beat somebody they're not supposed to beat. Please.
Dirk, I'm pretty sure I asked if Josh re-listened to the podcast.
I can tell you if you asked this. Yeah, I'll let you know.
I texted with Dirk on October 14th, 2017. It's my mom's birthday. I was in the early days of Airbnb in Holland, Michigan.
I was going through a divorce on October 14th, 2017.
I thought we were getting personal with back hairs, and now we're going into this.
We were having a nice time. I'm sorry about that, though. I'm texting with Dirk after Nebraska loses to Ohio State a lot to a little. And we're at that point in 2017. To your point, Dirk, you mentioned this earlier. You were like, we thought we had hit a point at some point. That was 7+ years ago. You and I were texting that night after the Ohio State loss, the one that pretty much cemented, hey, Mike Riley isn't going to stay here. And we were like, this is bottom, right? It's funny to think about it now. But I remember our text. We were like, this is bottom. We can't imagine it could get worse than that. And then we were like, what have been the worst moments over the course of the last several years? And we're texting while I'm in Michigan. And could you freaking imagine that the place we went from there when we thought we were at the bottom was just we weren't even 1% down to the bottom at that point.
Yeah, in 2017, I think I did a comprehensive ranking of Nebraska's.
That's what we were talking about.
Nebraska's worst losses since 2001. Okay?
We were talking about that.
And there was like 65 of them or 99 of them or something silly. And I ranked them all, and it would, we got a lot of web traffic because people like to indulge in misery and all that. But what's weird, Jack, is I don't even, like, if you asked me to name all the losses in the last 7 years, there's no way I would remember them all. Like, that's what's weird about it. And that's part of like why I had to do something different 2 years ago is it felt like we were talking about the same thing over and over and over again. Like, I don't even remember probably a fourth of them. Like, it just becomes a blur in your brain where it's like, yeah, Nebraska lost again. Nebraska lost the game they were supposed to win again. Nebraska blew it in the fourth quarter again. And it's just, and the thing we always talk about is how does it happen with such different personnel, with different coaching staffs, with, there's nothing in common except the helmet, right? There's nothing in common except the fan base. So what's going on? I don't have an answer. I didn't have an answer 7 years ago, and I certainly don't have one now.
I don't know where Josh went. I hope he's coming back. I want to ask you something. So I remember when I heard, and you'll remember this. Remember when I heard the second Bo tape, the one that was at Lincoln North Star, right? And he said something at that point where he was like, it's different here. People don't get it, but it's different here. And that pissed me off.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I still think that's wrong.
Do you? I was going to say, I'm starting to come around and think Bo was right on that.
No, I don't think he's right.
Really?
No. How would it be different here, Jack?
I don't know, but it seems like it. Nobody can freaking do anything here. Nobody can do it. You can bring anyone in, and it feels like it doesn't matter. It's different here. I think he was right, maybe.
Well, I think it was sour grapes for things going wrong. I think there is a dark joke here, which is that this kind of all started with firing Bo Pelini. It wasn't Frank Solich; it was firing Bo Pelini, and the curse. If you're going to make a curse argument, I think it's it's as much the day that they fired Pelini as anything else. And I don't think that's legit, but I think it's darkly comical that the last 10 years unfolded the way that it did. And I mean, that Black Friday loss, I mean, guys, the irony and symmetry of losing that game on essentially the 10-year anniversary of firing Bo Pelini, the way that they lost it, like, you can't make this crap up. Like, somebody is got the Herbie Husker voodoo doll and is just pounding this thing for 10 years now. But to your real question, I really don't think that there's something hanging over Nebraska that makes it unique.
You don't think there's something that makes it more challenging to succeed here for a coach?
I don't.
Okay.
The only thing that makes it different is geographic isolation. So if you're at Michigan, like, you are in close contact with Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, the only thing that makes us different is the fan base tends to get sucked up into Kool-Aid drinking and over optimism, because they think that, our offensive line is really good, when in fact they forget that Minnesota has those same guys and Iowa has those same guys. But because you're not in consistent contact with their media coverage, you don't really pay attention to that stuff. I think that's the only difference.
Dirk, sorry, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, and when it comes to the scrutiny, I don't buy that for a second. I mean, the scrutiny is higher in the SEC. I think Nebraska fans are way more forgiving of coaches and players than other places are. I don't know. I don't think it's that, Jack. I think that was sour grapes for Bo back in the day for why it didn't work out. I think some of the I think the conference thing was difficult. I think the some of the recruiting challenges used to be more difficult. The thing you forget isn't so much. Well, we're going to stumble through this, but I think Nebraska. The thing that I always talked about was Nebraska had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 advantages on everybody else for so long, and it was, the coaching staff continuity. It was being on TV more than everybody else. It was strength and conditioning. It was, nutrition. It was the walk-on program. It was a very specific, unique offense that was hard to prepare for week to week. They had all these advantages, and every single one of those advantages has essentially gone away. So I think that was the big change. But I think what we probably realized is once you take all those advantages away, Nebraska being Arkansas or Minnesota is more in line with reality than being Ohio State or Alabama. And that explains some of it, but it doesn't explain the fact that every college football program has had a banner season in the last 20 years, except Nebraska football. It's insane that there hasn't been one single season where you could plant your flag and say that one exceeded expectations right there. That's, we got it. We're back. They literally have not exceeded expectations since what? Name the year.
2009, 2012? Would it be that somewhere one of those seasons?
No way. 2012, they finished. I mean, any season at Nebraska where you lose 4 games, back then especially, you're not exceeding expectations. It's just crazy, how they haven't had one kind of breakout, where What Nebraska fan would have stood at the start of the season in the last 20 years and said, "Man, that was really good."
Yeah, because I mean, even if to go back to the earlier part of the discussion when you mentioned 2001, I mean that ends with like just all-time destructions. So it's like they make it to the national championship. They have the most memorable game in play of this century, right? In terms of the Oklahoma win and the stunts to crouch pass. But that season ends in such a horrific way that like that season doesn't even get celebrated. I mean, it does now because it's the last good one.
On the chat, D'Lo says it was 1997.
Yeah, I think it was.
One.
I think it was 1997. Because, I mean, seriously, we could go through them. 99 was a disappointment because that was a national championship team. I mean, there hasn't been one, you guys. 2005 was kind of close, because it was Callahan's second year, and the previous year was really disappointing, and they ended it with such a flourish. But it was still 8-4. Like, they weren't even a top 20 team. Pelini's years, I mean, 09 was good, but there was, the Texas thing was really bitter, and 2010 was such a missed opportunity. 2012 they lose 70-31 in the Big Ten title game. Like, there hasn't been a year, you guys. Like, not a year. Everybody else has had a year, and I'm not even talking about bowl seasons. I'm just like, what's a year where you can put your flag in the ground and say that was a lot of fun?
Yeah, no, I mean there were moments, but I can't. It's hard to put.
Of course, there were moments.
Like 09 and 12 and 10 are so hard for me to even go back to and put myself in my
Jack,
shoes.
it wasn't
at
12.
Point.
In 12, they lost 70-31 in the Big Ten title game.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What I don't know. I don't remember all these years. Criminy. Yeah. I get. Yes, you're right. And all I'm asking you, Dirk, is for a reason. Like, I thought you were going to come on here, and I thought you were going to come and have a reason, and I thought Dirk was going to be like, okay, I can explain, right? I can explain how this unexplainable streak of disappointment, of losing in close games, of defying mathematics, how it can happen. It sounds like you don't have the answer either, which is the primary reason we had you on. So you can just let us know now if that's not the case.
I got nothing.
Great guest.
We'll see you guys later.
Great guest, Josh.
Have a great show.
Great guest.
Appreciate you.
All right, next week we got that podcast guy. Great. Maybe he'll know.
I don't know what the hell I missed. My router, I want to throw it out into the street. It's making me so mad.
Why am I the only one who's not following off this thing? Are you guys this bored?
I did.
What happened with you, Jack?
I was switched. I pushed my switcher because I wanted to type on the keyboard and probably respond to something that D'Lo said. I don't even remember now. That was not internet related. That was because I pushed a button.
User error.
So it's fine. It won't happen again with me.
Well, hey, I'll be honest with you. You guys spend a lot of time on the internets without me there. So what is your reason? Why does this keep happening?
I told you I've come around. Me who was furious at Bo when he said that.
About the fans?
No, just not the second tape where he said, and I don't know if I completely agree with his reasoning that it was no, not that either. Just that it was different here. It was harder here. Like a coach comes here and they get in the twilight zone and they can't freaking figure it out. And I don't know if he had it completely explained in that moment.
I don't. That's not what he was talking about, Jack. He was talking about administrative support and I mean, I
have two possible theories. There is something different here than anywhere else. Number one, and a curse. That's all I have left. Right?
Josh?
That's all I got left.
I mean, the simplistic thing is just that they have continually made bad hires or over the hill hires, or they have had moments in time where the support wasn't there, in terms of inside of the athletic department. But I definitely think it goes beyond that. And I'm with you, Dirk. Like, I get really annoyed at that whole discussion of yeah, we care here. And there is a lot of media here that covers the program, right? Like, we can all speak to that. But that doesn't, they care in Alabama. John and I got into a discussion today about the way in which the program spends money, comparatively speaking, to other programs. And there is a part of me that does wonder if sometimes that is Nebraska too frugal? And yet that still will not explain, like, how do they not have the one good year? Like, as the question that you asked a few minutes ago of, like, the one breakthrough, 10-2, everyone's happy with the regular season year. That not spending enough money doesn't even explain that.
Yeah, I get really irritated when the conversation shifts to like, oh, there's just too much pressure on these guys. Like, shut up. Like,
Yeah.
pressure is playing at Ohio State. Pressure is playing basketball at Kansas, where there's 5 guys on the court, and the entire mood of the Kansas basketball fan base rests on how is Hunter Dickinson playing today. Like, and he does it 40 times a year. Like, there are so many athletes under more pressure than what Nebraska athletes are under.
Dirk, pressure is Ohio State wanting to fire Ryan Day, even though he's 66-10. Pressure is Tom Osborne being on the hot seat, even though he's awesome, but he loses to Oklahoma or the Florida schools. Like, they feel
it. They clearly feel it in these moments every time. It's clear. It's palpable. It oozes off the TV. You can feel it. Well, I don't feel it anywhere else. Like, you can actually feel it coming from your TV, the pressure, right? And the clenching. You can.
Dirk, let me ask you this. Dirk, if Matt Rule isn't going to succeed, because we know the reasons in hindsight why every other coach hasn't, what do you think would be the reason why Matt Rule is not, the guy that Jack, as he leans his head down, is hoping he'll be?
Isn't it just wild? Like, one thing that amazes me about the last 5 years of college football, especially, is just how, like, timelines accelerate. So everything moves so fast now. Like, after, I mean, Matt Rule was like, he seriously, like, enters next season, like, needing to win. Like, and you could argue that Mike Riley did too in year 3, like, but it's crazy how fast it happens. Like, 3 months ago, Nebraska was like a dark horse candidate for the college football playoff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, what the hell happened?
I like how you're avoiding the question.
No, I mean, I just think that I think when you make mistakes in the first year, and they made a mistake at quarterback, and they clearly made a mistake at offensive coordinator, and they, like, when you any mistake you make in the first year, and I would tell Bill Belichick this, like, you are going to be punished for that exponentially higher than if it was in year 6 or year 9. Like, you cannot screw up the first 2 months on the job. You just can't. Yeah.
Because it ruins everything else that's to come.
Yep.
3 years or 2 years, Josh, whatever it's been, of managing like an online community. What I hear from other people is that and Josh, check me if I'm, like, being over dramatic on this, but, like,
because you're never over dramatic.
check me if I'm being over dramatic on what I'm hearing from other people, but all I hear is about bad hires and bad coaches. That's the vast majority of what the people I hear are saying. Bad hires, bad coaches, bad assistants, bad head coaches. Nebraska went through the most unfortunate streak of hiring over 20 years, 25 years ever. Like, Josh, am I being, that's what people think, right? Every time around. Every time around. They think they hired the wrong guy, and they just got to change that, and that's the next thing. And it annoys the hell out of me, as you know.
Yeah, Dirk, Jack doesn't like talking about coaches. He'd rather talk about players. But what's interesting
I just don't think you can always fire a freaking way out of everybody. Why haven't they fired their way out of it yet, if that's the answer?
So it's very reminiscent of when bad professional franchises draft a player, like draft a quarterback, or, like when the Charlotte Hornets draft a guard, or, the freaking Detroit Lions used to draft a quarterback. It's like, oh, they drafted the wrong guy. He's a bust. He's like, no, he wasn't a bust. He sucked because he got drafted by you guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And so that's the argument that you're making, and I think that that's a valid argument. But I don't necessarily know. I don't think you can make an argument that the infrastructure at Iowa State,
correct,
or Missouri,
yeah,
or Colorado, or Iowa, all these programs that are K-State that are within like a stone's throw of here. How is the infrastructure and support and everything else better there than it is here? Like, at least in the professional ranks, you can say, well, you know, they don't put the resources into player development or whatever. Like usually bad franchises are cheap, or there's a bad owner or something like that. What's the argument here anymore? Like, what is the infrastructure argument? They spend $190 million or whatever on this, and $500 million on that, and $30 million on this, and like, there's nothing left from an infrastructure standpoint.
yeah.
So I don't even know what you can point to anymore.
Dirk, first of all, I wanted to read this coming from D'Lo, who says Mike Shula would be 34 and 187 in year 18 at Bama if Jack was AD in Tuscaloosa, which I think is funny. But before my internet crapped out, I can't remember if it was the first or the second time, I had written this question down for you, and so I'll ask it now, given what you just said. Do you still believe in the idea of Husker football? Like, we have moved the goalposts many times over the last however many years, right? Of like, I remember when I first came to the realization of they can't win the national championship. And I just remember when I felt that way, and I certainly feel that way now. They'll never win another national championship again. I mean, have we gotten into the territory of like believing that they can't even win a conference championship anymore? Or are you still a believer in that it just takes the certain whatever, administrator, coach, player, etc.?
Well, I think it can still be fun. I don't think it can be like nationally elite. I think it can be at a point where you do occasionally have that breakout season. Like, why can't Nebraska have an Arizona State season, or why can't Nebraska have an Indiana season? Like, there's no reason why you can't have those little spasms of success. But consistently, Josh, I don't know. I mean, there's not really a reason why it can't happen, but when you start talking about that stuff, about how it's still possible, it's a little bit like saying, like a 65-year-old guy saying, I could still run a marathon or whatever. Like, it's not, there's so many steps in between that you have to get to, before you can even really be realistic about that stuff. So,
yeah.
I don't really see any, like, I think the recruiting thing is kind of garbage. I mean, in the portal era, like, Nebraska should be fine there. Yep. Financially, they should be fine. They're going to have the exposure. They're going to have the media platform. Like, there are lots of reasons why it can still work. But the fact that it hasn't now for so long, it just, you start talking that way and it almost makes you sound ridiculous. So, now that said, like, I'm still kind of old school, smug native Nebraskan. Like, they reach a bowl game and everybody's dancing on the field against Wisconsin, and I'm just rolling my eyes like, this is ridiculous. Like, what are we doing here?
Dirk, where the hell have you been?
I don't care. I don't care.
I 100% disagree with you.
I don't care. That's like having your toddler who, like, they threw their food off the table every day for a week, and suddenly they like finished a plate of French fries, and you're like, oh, good job, we're gonna celebrate that. It's like, no, wake me up when they've beaten somebody they're not supposed to beat, Jack.
It's your fault if you didn't bring your toddler up to be a better. At some point, you've got to give your toddler some hope in life, right? It's your fault. You didn't give the damn toddler any hope growing up, and so they've never had any positive reinforcement. So yeah, you better give them a little bit then, because they haven't ever had it.
I can't celebrate 6-6 in the Pinstripe Bowl.
I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking the next generation to, or they're leaving, bud. They're leaving. And if you think it's hard now when an entire freaking generation leaves, man, I'll tell you what, it's going to get even harder to get over this curse.
It is funny when you start doing the math on some of this stuff. Like, are you ever like, when you're in the car and you're like listening to one of your favorite songs in 1988, and you're like, oh my gosh, the distance between that song and now is the equivalent of like, me listening to a song from the 1940s, right? When I was a kid, right? Have you ever had those moments?
Right. Or
It's
like
the Back
moment...
to the Future thing, right? Where it's like 30 years in Back to the Future was 55. 30 years for us is 1994 when they last won a title.
So the reason I bring it up is like, it's been 25 years since a conference championship. Like my kid is 14. So like, I'm trying to imagine, Jack, or, so I say you because you're more my age than Josh is, but like, we are at the point, it's like the gap is now the same as it was like from when we were kids to like the late 60s, it's like.
Right. And here you are scolding your kids for getting too excited about touchdowns, right? Against, like Dirk's like, don't cheer that loud. That's not how we did it in the 90s, right? Am I right?
I will say that strain of my personality is hard to let go of. I mean, it's just
sad. Man, it's good that you don't tweet that much anymore. Those people online are the worst.
How would you know?
Yeah, you don't follow him.
I do follow him. I didn't.
No, you don't.
I'm checking.
You do not.
I'm checking.
If you followed me,
listen,
you would have responded to my roundabout tweets. Stop it.
No, I didn't. You're right. I saw those and I did ignore them. I did. It says following. So,
yeah, right.
Elon might have shadow unfollowed me, but I follow you technically.
Hey, go to unmute.
Yeah, click the unmute button. Hey, Dirk.
I don't do that to anyone in media. That's odd.
Does the Scott Frost UCF Part 2, does that interest you at all?
Okay, so it's funny you bring that up because in November of 2017, I fly down to Orlando to write a profile of Frost. This is like when people kind of knew that it was going to happen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska is playing at Minnesota that day. I think this was the Bill Moose thing, wasn't it? Like in the
Bill Moose was after. No, Bill Moose was that night I was texting you on October 14th. We were texting on Saturday night. He got hired on Sunday morning.
No.
I'm saying he's talking about the
that was the next year.
No, it wasn't. It was Mike Riley's last year.
Yeah, it was in the press box at Minnesota. He was like,
okay,
no!
my bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, so anyway, it was that Saturday because I remember like I checked my phone and Minnesota had run back the opening kickoff, and I'm sitting at a UCF UConn game.
Yes.
And there's like 4,000
civil conflict.
There.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, my takeaway from that trip when Frost, and I did a lot of reporting, and I came back thinking to myself, holy crap, I'm not sure he should leave. I'm serious. Like I did not go down there with that impression. And yet after being down there for 48 hours and talking to him and a bunch of people, it was like, I don't actually think he should leave. He's got it really good right here. So that part of me, this totally makes sense because, he has obviously good memories of them and they have good memories of him. And if he could go back, obviously he would have never taken the Nebraska job. Yeah. Does that mean that I'm like super happy for him? Like that might be stretching it a little bit, but I do think he has a decent chance of being successful. I don't think the conference is that tough. I think he'll be able to tap into some of the old excitement. If he can kind of get some of the gang back together, I think the template is probably pretty similar to what it was before. So, boy, wouldn't it be a kick in the shorts if Frost has a great season before Matt Rule does?
Jack?
It's not going to. I don't know what he's talking about. It's going to be terrible. It's definitely not going to work. You can't just hire. You can't just recreate. I've tried to recreate the 90s in my own life. It doesn't work. You can't do it. Like, anything that was awesome, you try to recreate, you can't do it. It always is not as good as you hoped it would be.
Hey,
I believe that holds true.
It is going to be hilarious when the next hire for Nebraska is Bo Pelini, though.
Good Lord. I think, Dirk, I've said it a couple times. I think Frost will be worse than Mac Brown was at North Carolina. Like, that's kind of the line of, like, can they be above or below? Mac went to one conference title. They were above 500, I think, every year. I don't think he'll be able to surpass that, though. I feel like that would be his ceiling at UCF.
Well, I don't mean to say that he's going to like go to the playoff, but like, is he going to do better than he did at Nebraska? Yes.
Agree. Yes, agree with that. But yeah. Man.
How have we not talked about Nebraska basketball yet? This is like
because Josh is here. That's why
I was gone for like 10 minutes.
All of a sudden, his internet will break down again if we start talking Nebraska.
No, let's talk some
basketball.
Hoops. What's your take on the early part of the year? A month into the season? What's the early vibes?
They're better than I thought they were going to be. Connor Essegian better shoot and make 6 threes a game. They're big. They're relatively tough, but I do question their, continuity and do they have the best player on the floor against Big Ten teams? Characteristic that is kind of important. So, but yeah, there's enough there to at least be interested for sure.
They're big, although they're big, but then their worst game of the year, they looked tiny against Michigan State.
Michigan State's really good. I think that's part of it.
Not even a top 25 team. Are they a top 5 team in the Big Ten?
I think so.
Think so? All right.
Now there's like 20 teams in the Big Ten, so I don't know, but
yeah. No, I don't know either. It was
more interestingly, do you think Belichick will work?
No,
absolutely not.
Definitely
Absolutely not.
Him
and Frost should play in a bowl because the don't work bowl.
They're playing in week 4 next year, Jack. So
Are they?
You don't even have to wait for a bowl game.
They should have a don't work trophy in that game.
Dirk, the trope of people forget is long been beaten into the ground, or dead horse has been beaten by me many times over. But like people forget that the end of his time in New England was not very good, and his hires, like maybe they were an FU to Kraft, but like. He had Joe Judge and Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinators in one of those years with Mac Jones. Like, I don't understand why I'm to expect this to work, especially given he's also never coached in college before.
Well, the college thing is a real concern. I would remind you that he's not going against the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons and the Duke Blue Devils. Okay,
that's true.
So I think
State.
I think he might get to 8-4 just because of some of that. I'm just the comic potential is just out of this world. I mean, I'm picturing him saying "Do your job" to some backup quarterback, and the backup quarterback saying, "Well, actually, I'm a student athlete, and this is just kind of my
miserable.
Like this isn't actually my job." He's gonna hate parts of it for sure. He'll hate recruiting. He'll hate social media. He'll hate message board, all that crap.
Message board. He will hate 85% of his job. That's the number. He'll hate 85%.
Imagine
of his job.
Imagine him meeting with North Carolina boosters, trying to schmooze them to give more money to the program.
You will hate so much of his job.
Can you imagine him doing like a radio show on Franklin Street on a Tuesday night?
And I know he thinks he can go and he can delegate all that. But going in there and the attention that comes with him going in there makes it even harder to do that. He is going to freaking hate that job.
Well, and this idea that kids are drawn to his NFL experience, no, they're not. Kids don't know anything. They're idiots.
Well, how old are they? Old enough to remember it?
We talked about this today. The last time he won a Super Bowl was 6 years ago. So a freshman in college today would have been 12 or 13 years old.
They're like, Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes.
They were probably mad that the Patriots won against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. They don't care about the Patriots of that era.
They don't even know who Tom Brady is.
Yeah. Ask one of those North Carolina recruits who Julian Edelman is. They have no freaking clue. No idea. Danny Amendola, nothing.
Gronk. They might know Gronk.
How about going back further? How about Troy Branch? Nothing.
They definitely don't know any of the receivers from that era.
Well, I definitely do, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we're old.
Yeah, we are old.
Yeah,
we're definitely.
So this is like what you guys do all the time, huh? This is what you consider content?
Well, usually the internet's working a little bit better, so it's not as stilted from time to time.
It's usually me. Yes, very much. This is very similar. I'm arguing with people in the chat. I don't know if you've noticed that. Not that I'm not listening to you. I'm having side debates while I'm typing.
Hey, I do listen to quite a few shows.
Yeah?
I actually I got to be honest with you.
You
I
stop.
like I like Josh's running podcast more than I like this podcast. But
Do you really?
yes, I've told you that.
You didn't tell me you liked it more than the I-80 Club. That's funny though.
Well, so I don't know how you guys feel about this. When I listen to stuff, I like to listen to stuff that I am not potentially going to write about or cover, because there's not like when you listen to something somebody says, you're not like, oh, I should have thought of that, or I should have done that, or I should have written that, or whatever. Like if I listen to an NBA podcast, which I do a lot, or a political podcast, which I do a lot, I'm not connected to any of those worlds. So
Sure.
there's never part of me that's like, oh, I would have made that argument better than that person just did. So that's why I like the running stuff.
Interesting.
And it's kind of comparable to the old Where I Come From, which if any sponsor is out there, they should probably, reach out to me to try to restart that thing.
Hey, Dirk, I don't know how much time we have left with you, but I did want to ask you about like the journalism stuff, because in the interview that we did 2 years ago, you had mentioned that you were kind of excited to flex maybe some different muscles. I don't think that you had really written at that point, because that was fresh off of your end at the World Herald. I think it was a couple months later. You've written since then, though. You've written multiple times.
He has.
Like, wow. Are you looking to flex any of those journalism or interview muscles at times moving forward? Do you think you're going to get back into it more? Jack must know something that I don't hear with this.
No, I don't know anything. I'm just I'm just being an a-hole. Sorry.
I mean, I honestly don't know. I don't want to like go too far down the rabbit hole here, but like some of that stuff, the creativity that is required to do some of that stuff well, and I didn't always do it well, but the creativity that requires to do it well is exhausting, and it's not necessarily conducive to a wife and 3 kids at home and 16 basketball games on the weekend, and it's just, it got really hard to do that stuff well and also like be a good parent, because it's on your mind all the time. Like if I'm writing a story, and I'll give you an example. So 2 months ago I write a story about when the presidential stuff was happening. I was interested in the Tim Walz connection just because of Nebraska. So I wrote a story about Tim Walz and basically the people that knew him in Alliance. And guys, I mean, this, it's what you think about. You think about this story and like the structure of it, and it just kind of consumes your thoughts for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It depends on the story, obviously. But I don't know. I had a hard time as my kids got older, sort of doing that stuff well and compartmentalizing it to where I could leave it behind, and so I'm probably happier now. I do think there's probably a point where I go back into that stuff in some form. I would really like to get good at audio storytelling. I think that's something that I would be good at. I just don't technically know how to do it well. And not necessarily what you guys are doing or even what, you're doing with the running stuff, Josh, but more of like
long form storytelling.
Yeah. Like report a story in audio form. Like that would be exciting to me. Right.
Yeah.
Put it in. And frankly, I don't think there's very much of that out there that's very good, especially in the sports realm. Yeah. And I think there's an opportunity hopefully there at some point, but technically I'm not to the point where I can do that well yet. So, I don't know. I'm kind of taking it 6 months at a time here. I'm doing lots of little things. I used to have one big ball in the air, and now I've got about 8 little balls in the air. I'm coaching a lot about youth basketball, and I'm absolutely loving that. I'm helping with Gretna High School, and I absolutely love that. And I do some writing stuff, or 5 different places. But I don't necessarily miss the, the grind. I don't necessarily miss having to have an opinion about everything that happens. I mean, honestly, what you guys do is amazing, because not just the repetition of it, but like when people say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Like, sometimes it's okay to just say, "I don't know. I don't really have any opinions on that. I don't think that much about it," and I don't miss that part of it, where like I have to chime in, right? I don't miss that at all. So that doesn't mean that I don't still consume a lot of content, and even local content. I still read a lot. I still listen to a lot, but I don't necessarily miss the grind of it. And I certainly don't miss, like, Nebraska loses a game in agonizing fashion, and I have to find something else to say that I haven't already said. Right.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Dirk, 2 things. First off, I know that exact feeling that you talk about of where a story consumes you. I have an idea for a long-form storytelling podcast that I would love to dive into at some point. And every now and then I can't fall asleep because I just lay there thinking about it for an hour and exactly how I would go about doing it. So that very much resonates. Stibbs did write this. He says, "Dirk, I've shared your tribute to Marlene on the Lost Rail site with so many people. It's such a great piece. It sticks out from a lot of great pieces you've written. Love reading your stuff. Would also like a guest pass or something if we can make that happen. Thanks." And then he did add, "Also, I'll produce your audio storytelling seriously." So you do have a producer in your corner if you need one of those, and he's the best.
Seriously, if I was smart, I would team up with one of you guys, because I've got 5 or 6 really good ideas. And I probably just need to team up with somebody who's better at the technical side, because I think there's some potential there. I'm not quite ready yet to have something consume my creative thoughts for 100 hours a week, which is kind of what inevitably happens.
Yeah.
Well, when you're ready, I-80 Club. No, I'm going to tell you, this is not a joke. This is not me insulting you or anything. I-80 Club's about to make some moves that nobody knows about, and Josh and I know about. I-80 Club's about to make some moves, so that you'll be that might pave the way for you to join us someday. So think about it.
I'm trying to think of a roundabout joke right now, and it's on the tip of my tongue.
You got to be. You're a writer. You're not as fast as like the audio
as us who talk on the air all the time.
It's hard. It's tough. It's tough. You got to edit, right? I get it.
It is a different skill. There's a reason I'm good at Twitter. It's because I can think about it before I tweet. So
yeah, well,
you would know that if you followed me. If you unmuted me.
I'm good at both. So.
What did we miss, boys?
I don't know, man. I wrote my question. Let's see, what else did I have? I had a question.
I feel like last time we did this, it was a lot more emotional. Were we like crying or something last time?
It did. You started talking about how old you guys were when Nebraska was good, and how children today.
We did that again. We just did that again.
And we did it again. Yeah. Jack told the same story about the Ohio State loss, and now I'm honestly confused about which loss he meant, because on the first episode he mentioned it being in 2016. So I thought he was talking about the 62-3 game, but then today he said 2017.
Let me look it up.
Both
jerks.
were bad. For the record, both games were really bad, Jack. I just didn't know.
The one in Lincoln. What year was it in Lincoln?
2017.
That was the game I was. Bill Moose got hired the next day. That was the day I was texting with Dirk.
Okay.
Whatever that was.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Wow. Yeah, I remember why I got emotional. Last time we were talking about last year, Gretna basketball last year.
That's with Brad. Yeah,
that happened too.
So
yeah.
Sure. Well, hey, it's nice to be asked back once a year. I mean, you think that I would be good enough friends with you guys where it would be more than once a year, but I mean, okay, whatever. Once a year.
Hey, to be fair, we were gonna do this about a month ago, and then
don't do that. Don't
do
that.
All right.
I didn't want to do it either. I still don't want to do it.
Yeah,
I'm disconnected. I've disconnected from that world. That's another story.
Yeah, just like you and I disconnected from the podcast at various points tonight. Dirk, what do you have to plug? Where can people find you if they're interested in your work? And then they don't want to go search at Omaha.
What do I have to plug?
His Twitter account to me and basically nothing else.
Dirk,
the reason I got out of this world is so I don't have to plug crap anymore. What are you talking about? There's nothing to plug.
Nice. Go buy
his great basketball coaching skills. How about that?
Buy Dirk's book, 24th in Glory. I would recommend that. You could plug that.
Hey, I will say this. That thing, the shelf life on that thing is ridiculous. Like, I still get requests all the time to come speak at places, like schools that are still interested in buying a bunch of copies. Like, that has been such a joy to me to just keep that thing going. And I can't believe people are still, reading it for the first time 5 years later. But it has been awesome. Like, even like this week, I got 2 emails, one from a teacher, one from a nonprofit in town, and they want to, they each wanted to buy 20, 30 books and have me come speak. And I love doing that stuff. I mean, there's the nice part about those big projects like that, you guys, compared to, the most recent turn in Nebraska football is the shelf life on those long stories is so cool. Like, they don't really go away. So
that's awesome, man.
And I do a lot of 24th and Glory stuff still. I coach a lot of basketball. I work at, do freelance stuff for different places. I help out at Lost Rail a little bit. There's lots of different places that I am involved in, and and it's fun. I miss doing what you guys do about 10 days a year. The other 355, not so much.
Again, you didn't just get on camera and talk right off the bat. It's a different deal. I'm telling you, you get in this world, you're going to like it. That's all I'm saying. You're going to like it.
There's a reason, Dirk, that Tony Kornheiser doesn't write anymore. And same with Bill
interview
Simmons.
To line up. No, type in, editing. You turn on the camera, you turn on the mic, you go.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like I'm doing a lot of work here. Does it look like I do a lot of work? No, absolutely not. Brad, no.
You know what? Okay, so you're right about that, and that's not denigrating you, but you are right about that. There is a piece of this though that is appealing, and that is, I think we've obviously moved away from a world in which everybody kind of connected to, a few big media sources, and it's much more dispersed now.
Yep.
To where you kind of find your people, right? Like, and it's that way, obviously, in the political landscape and everything else. But you find your people, and then you find the I-80 club. You find it's not like it was 10 years ago, where if I'm writing, everybody in the state is reading what I write. I mean, those aren't backhanded compliments, but I do think there is kind of a joy in. There's obviously a downside to silos and segregating people and stuff like that, but there is, I think, a joy to where, like, if people are coming to find you, like, they really like what you say, like they like what your content, and you can build community that way, in a way that was much more difficult 10 years ago.
Definitely.
Yeah, which is, I think that's
kind of the thesis of the club, right, Jack?
Exactly. Like, that's why what we're doing works right now in terms of community. So yeah, I agree.
Dirk, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us and dealing with our various, mainly my technical snafus. Sorry that we went right from very much fun and roundabouts to why is Nebraska football so bad. I can't wait to go back and listen to what I missed. It seems like Jack talked about curses and how Nebraska is a cursed program. So I can't wait to check it out later tonight.
I can't wait. Yeah. I can't wait for the next time that I get asked to do this in 2027, when Josh, you come back and listen to this interview again, so you can, like, throw quotes back at me about things that I said before Nebraska went 3-9 and 2-10 the next 2 years.
That's called prep, baby.
We'll interview Dirk in 2027. I'll say it. Remember when I texted you that night in 2017? And
you'll have the year wrong. You'll be like, remember it was 2015.
I don't care. Text. And then I'll ask him about that big turnover article he wrote, because turnovers will be back then.
You guys, the turnover thing is insane. How are they still doing this? How are they still doing this?
It was better this year. It was better. I mean, listen, they were okay. By the way, they were too risk averse this year on offense. If you want to take from me, they were too worried about turnover. They might have read Dirk's article a little too much. I thought
Matt Rule was pointing at it, guys. I need you to look at this article.
Somebody gave it to him. They were all too risk averse this year.
It always comes back to blaming Dirk. There's just inevitably
classic.
Pretty much.
Dirk, this was great. Jack, we have a Nebraska ball brunch show. Nebraska ball brunch show coming up Friday morning.
Big game Friday night. Dirk, Indiana, you going?
Not going. We'll be paying attention though.
All right, perfect. So we'll have Nebraska ball brunch.
Indiana.
And then later that night, after Nebraska ball, with Jack, Caleb, and Bigelow. So we'll have that, and then Jack and I back behind the paywall on Saturday morning for the Saturday morning coffee show.
Yeah, we're gonna do the post game while the shout out John Cook. Hopefully we're gonna. I don't know what the timing's gonna be on that, Josh, but we'll be doing the post game show the same time as the volleyball game is going on.
Are you worried about Wisconsin, Jack?
Volleyball?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Nebraska volleyball.
Dreams.
Nebraska volleyball is the exact opposite of Nebraska football. Nebraska football, every time anything could possibly go wrong, I expect it to go wrong. Nebraska volleyball, no matter what kind of a terrible situation they're in, I assume it will always go right. It's crazy. At the same school, you have the complete polar opposite of confidence with your team.
I believe the phrase you're looking for is winners win and losers lose.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And I feel like that's a perfect note to end things on. Dirk, again, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you in 2027.
All right, see you guys. Appreciate you.
See you, Dirk. Have a good one.
For Jack, I'm Josh. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us tonight inside of the I-80 Club.